Hello everybody, Chris here from Truly Holistic. Now we're going to talk about a common expression, which for me is a mentality that we all get conditioned to embody, and that is seeing as believing, right? Because when we look generally over, the collective humanity, we are very dependent on what we see and what we then think about what we see. And that's how we were conditioned. These were the tools that were given to us to perceive and process our life, our reality. But they are flawed, and I'm going to talk about that in this video. Now, if anybody's unaware, science is provided the fact that our visible sight, what we see, is 0.0035% of the electromagnetic spectrum of light. Now, that means that we don't even see 1% of what can be seen as part of reality. And then the field of quantum physics, they often note that for reality to be here, it requires an observer. And of course, observer, that's what we see, right? So there's this essence of, okay, what we see with what we're given, our visible eyes, is very limited in its capacity. So kind of being dependent on what we see is essentially putting ourselves into a confinement of understanding our reality, our everyday life. But also, there is a step in play where how we apply our attention, our focus, right, was what we see, is becoming reality too. So what I've been, looking at, that seeing believing is flawed. And of course, what gave us that mentality was mind thought mentality pathway, what we're conditioned to use. And what I've come to find at Truly Holistic is what we authentically, infinitely are. And the very part of us that made the decision to come here to have a life, to have an experience, is the soul. And the soul is facilitated through the heart. It's not facilitated through the mind. And what we signed up for as a soul was to expand our experience, right? And what I now know why we're here is, we, just like quantum physics states, right? Reality's not here unless there's an observer. We've found that, through the mechanism of where attention goes, energy flows, which implies that what we focus on, we apply our manifestation ability to it to make it real, to make it reality. So in that sense, we create and forge our life, our reality. Life doesn't happen to you, it's forged. Okay, so we came here to create our experience and then to live out that experience. And in each and every moment, that experience, its purpose is to present a lesson, which is the word karma, right? A lesson that we learn from, and that means we convert that experience into wisdom. We don't hold on to the experience. We create the experience, we live the experience, we learn the experience, we convert it into wisdom, and we take it back to where we come from, which is the quantum. So in essence, we're not supposed to hold anything. We're not supposed to limit our capacity. We're supposed to expand our experience. And of course, the only way that we can perceive in that experience there is a lesson, and also to understand the lesson, is to be in our heart, to enable our expansive capacity of who we are, to understand it, to experience it, which is ourself as a soul. When we're in the mind, what we were taught to use, we don't perceive the experience as a lesson, and we don't understand the lesson that is there, meaning we hold on to that experience and we accumulate attachments based on that experience. So clearing we often do, where we remove karmic attachments from the body, and particularly the nervous system. So, and that causes many issues that then humanity gets stuck with, in traumas, and a lot of the health problems that we see today that people go through. So, from seeing as believing, this only means we become dependent on the variables that are part of our outside world, not what's constant. What's constant is you. Okay. So in that state, we're vulnerable, and we become dependent on that, or to that essence of what we see. Now, if we switch around seeing as believing to believing as seeing, okay, is that we ourselves then build that structure of our belief, right, into what we then experience, what we see. Because what we've come to find is that whatever becomes our belief structure is how we then apply our manifestation ability to make it real. Okay, so our belief structure becomes what we see, right? What quantum physics states. For reality to be, it requires an observer, and that's connected to that expression. Where our attention goes, energy flows. That implies that where we place our attention, our focus, we use what our formless energy frequencies to convert it into physical reality, matter, right? Then we experience that for ultimately to learn from that experience. Okay, so really, seeing and believing is flawed. It's not real. Believing and seeing is actually what's going on. And the great thing about that, believing and seeing, the greatest news of all time, is that instead of being in a vulnerable, dependent state, you're now in a powerful, empowered state in the aspect of right? Empowered, which is EM, which is also associated with the prefix of EN. Do you know what that means? Within. Okay. Right, because I often mention about there are two forms of discernment as the human. There is heart, feel, knowing, and mind, thought, mentality. We get taught and conditioned to use mind, thought, mentality, and what that does, that externalizes our perspective and perception of reality to build a belief structure that everything originates outside of ourselves, which just ends up us being vulnerable, believing we are insignificant, and then depending on those variables. When we provide a state of being by being in heart, feel, knowing, we facilitate what we are as a soul. We become more self-aware of our choices, and realizing that our choices, which are part of our belief structure, is what forges our experience, forges our reality. But the thing is, we never learned this. Why? Because, as I said, we got taught to use a mind, thought, mentality approach, which externalized our perception and perspective of reality. So it never showed us an option of going within. We went that way instead of this way. So we need to turn the tables. We need to realize what we are, who we are, the very reason and purpose we are here. And Truly Holistic can show you the way, can facilitate you that within our reality coaching session option that people are loving. People that invest in reality coaching session, the biggest feedback I get at the end of the session is, wow. And they come back for more. Essentially, everyone that starts that type of session option, they just want to continue because it's transformational. You're learning more about yourself, your connection to the body, to provide wellness and vitality, to remedy any illness, any problem. But that is just the icing on the cake. There's so much more to learn and to enjoy this experience while you have it, and to fulfill the very reason why you're here. Often is called ascension in the spiritual sense. If you want to learn more, go and book an appointment at trulyholistic.net/appointments/. Catch you later.